Okay, so I figured in today's video I'd do something a little bit out of the ordinary for me, a little bit out of my comfort zone, because I know when I do music, so much of this is just like in my mind. I never actually talk, obviously, because I'm usually by myself or live streaming the stuff I do. So I figured I would take some time just to go into this as if I had no real plan and just make music with commentary, which may take some extra time to get used to. So I'm in Logic. I'm gonna open up a single instrument track. And the way that I typically process music, I really like going to Omnisphere because I feel that the sounds that are in Omnisphere, I don't know, I typically just load up a preset of, you know, strings of some sort. For this one, it's going to be more orchestral ambient. I have in my mind maybe reversed guitars kind of swelling in and out throughout the entire song. So let's search. Actually, I'm gonna use the browser and just search for ambient strings. I know I do like Dreamy String Orchestra because that one has been so good in the past. It's got like a really, oh, I don't know, a really kind of just acoustic string, but it's like it's got that big ambient tone to it when you get into big chords. I'm gonna drop an octave, and I think the last time I used this, it was actually in 432. Let's go up to 440. There we go, that sounds a lot more natural. And of course, I was tracking guitars last with a buffer size of 32. Let's go to 256. And if I hear clicks and pops, I'll probably raise it again. This is really unfiltered, like straight recording as if I'm starting a track from normal. Okay, so Dreamy String Orchestra. I know the way my mind thinks is I think in the key of D. So when I am composing, that's kind of my go-to key. And I'll either transpose the MIDI into another key or maybe capo up one of my guitars or something. So I'll record in D, however, I will actually maybe transpose it up to another key or down to something else. I like that. Although I do like it, I'm going to add some other stuff to it. I know bowed colors and then kind of filtering through, I really have no idea what I do usually. If I do anything really specific. Bowed, let's see, bowed piano sounds interesting. I'll just kind of play with these patches and mute the strings because I want to hear. Let's go to multi MIDI 1. Okay, that sounds horrifying. That's not what I want. Nephris, anything sounds bad. Let's go bowing the temple. So they're really like ambient kind of sounds. I want something that's going to add maybe some sparkle to the top of a string part. Okay, this is getting closer. Let's try pad. So it's like a reversed piano part almost like reversed bowed piano. So by itself, it even sounds cool. So I'm going to layer that in a little bit just to kind of make the strings more interesting. So here's like normal. Just play a D chord. And I'll bring in that hurdy-gurdy-ish pad. honestly, a feature that I kind of like about the hurdy-gurdy-ish pad, that patch, it almost doesn't have release samples. So as I'm playing and I take my notes off and I go to the next chord, it almost cuts off the previous chord. It has that kind of like ramping up, then cuts off, almost like a reversed piano part, pretty much. I think I like that. It's gonna be cool. So let's hear it. I do know I'm gonna bring that down a little bit more. Negative 18-ish. I want to hear the sparkle, but not like make the hurdy pad like its own thing. Cool. So I like that. Let's go on to another instrument. One of my go-tos is Native Instruments Contact, because most of the stuff I have is already loaded up in there anyway. So I'm going to go into Contact. And the way I kind of think when I do this stuff is I'll record one really long, big take with strings, and that string pad I made very, very quickly in Omnisphere. I'll record that, and then what I'll do is I'll take the lowest notes and I'll actually convert those to their own instrument. That way I have independent like control over bass. So let's see what that is like. I'll find a bass sound. I know as far as good bass, like acoustic stringed bass, Session Strings Pro, that's about as good as it gets. I know they have a new one. I think it's Session Strings Pro 2. I don't have it yet, so I'll just use this one. Let's go basses. Production is what I'm looking for. I don't need key switches. Oh, wrong key. Let's go down an octave. That'll be good. I'll come back to that later. Next up, I want to go to... I feel like I don't do enough stuff with piano because I usually revert straight to electric guitar swells and whale noises and stuff. Let's load up a grand piano, and I'll make it like ambient-y. I'll use some reverb, and then what I'll do is I'll actually compress the reverbed signal, which is kind of backwards from what you'd normally do. And like I said, the way that I think it's typically going to be, you know, when I record, I'm in the key of D. When I actually mix, I typically mix on the individual instrument channel strip, which I know is not the best for CPU. However, I'm not typically doing a lot of bus routing where I'm putting effects on their own bus, then routing, you know, amounts of that signal through the bus sends to that specific bus to do processing together. So I'll just load up a piano part. Let's go with Contact again. Let's do the Gentleman. I don't want something that's going to be like big grand piano concert, you know. Let's go something a little bit smaller sounding, so I'm going to lower the dynamic range, make it more soft. And I may even hop over to the Studio Logic controller for that. Has such a natural feel for a keyboard. I love it. For the actual tone of the piano, I'm gonna turn on the hammer sounds. Let's see. I feel like for pianos, I almost like the actual noises that a piano makes. Like I know if you mic up an actual grand or upright piano, you're gonna hear hammers tacking against the strings. And you're only going to really hear that when you do have, like, it's kind of a compressed signal. I'm not going to really crush it like I normally do with compression. Man, let's go a little bit less, but I do want to have a higher ratio. There's like no dynamic range with the keyboard I have that I usually use for pads, so which is why I'll hop over to the other keyboard. And I want to add, let's add a Valhalla Shimmer. My go-to reverb, because this thing is awesome. Medium stereo, not huge. And I'll turn down the mod. Cool. I like that. Let's add a little bit more reverb. Let's see what a little bit of the shimmer would sound like. Now, I think for this actual project, I'm not going to make it a crazy long, like 15-minute track. I'm going to do probably less than 3 minutes. In fact, I'm actually going to make myself stick to that. So I'll add the secondary ruler. And this track will be, let's go 3:45-ish. I know when I'm doing stuff, I usually don't pay attention to like how far along in a track I am. And I will add a couple of tracks for guitars. For the method of what I'm going to do for electric guitars, I'm thinking I'm going to do something along the lines of like slide swells. So I have a glass slide that I use whenever I do play guitar and do ambient swells and stuff, as well as I might try some like bend strings up to an octave, and then you kind of swell in with that, but with a high overdrive, high gain distortion pedal, you're actually going to create like almost like a horn sound. It's like, I'm thinking if I reverse that, it'll sound like a horn swell, like a horn section, trumpets and everything. We'll see. I'll play with that a little bit. So let's play with this. Let's make sure I have the strings ready. Whenever I do this, I usually don't have a chord progression in mind. I usually just hit record and see what happens. Turn off the click, because I don't need to hear it. Oh shoot, if I'm gonna do piano stuff, I'd like to quantize that. So let's go 64 BPM at 4/4. It's a little bit fast for what I want. 60, let's do 58. Here we go. Another quick thing I want to change before I get too far into this. Let's add a division into my metronome. Let's hear what that sounds like. Not bad. That'll do for now. I like to hear the actual beat of whenever I am recording. And I'll probably turn that up a little bit. Not like piercingly loud. Cool. And just because I can, I'm gonna mute my microphone while I do this. Well, went over 3 minutes. Who cares? Oh well. Because I know I wanted to have a little bit of a quieter section in the middle where I'm not doing so much with strings and pads and stuff. What I will do is I'll extend that last note, the last chord. Under 5 minutes is still a win. Usually I do probably 10-15 minutes. I'll drag that out. End on the 1. So it sounds resolved. That'll do, and I'll fade that out as it gets there in the track. I don't do automation when I start off. So next up, I want to add... Actually, I'll go straight to that... Ooh. I'll go straight to that bass track. And what I'll do... If there's a key command that makes stuff like this faster, let me know. I would love to speed this up. For my workflow, this can take a little while. I go through and I just select the higher notes, especially melodies and stuff, or melody-esque type parts. And I kind of craft a bass part from it. And I will actually explain this later. It becomes like a... This part kind of becomes a drone pad, so it's not playing notes that follow the chords, but what it is doing is actually just kind of creating an ambient on top of whatever I'm going to do on piano. So I will leave this part all here on the original track, but for this, I'm just going to cut it out. Because piano is going to kind of become the main instrument there. Now, when I am doing this, I do have a tendency to go in and, if I need to, drop an octave of an instrument, or not an instrument, but like an individual note in chords. So if for some reason I don't like the fact that these notes are up here, I might drop them down an octave if it sounds better in the part. And another thing I will do is drop an octave of the entire recording. So let's hear what that sounds like with the kind of like faux bass track. Okay, so it still sounds pretty high. I know with the first couple notes it was actually an octave higher than it should be. Let's drop that. And just because I can, I know the dynamic range of that is really wide, so I'm going to go up. Just kind of shrink that down a little bit. And because I recorded to a metronome, let's line that back up. Get it back in time. There we go. Cool. So, here's what it sounds like. And I know that I did clip during this. And because of that, I'm actually going to drop the click. And here's that soloed bass part. Not bad. And I did not go into this main first recording that I took, and I didn't delete these lower notes because it's actually played an octave above what the bass instrument is playing. So it's not going to cause too much low-end muddy mix. Let's go to the piano part where I know I'm going to have a little bit of free-flowing stuff right here. And I, again, don't know what I'm going to play, so I'm going to hit record, and I make it a goal of mine to do a single take and not have to worry about, oh, I didn't play that part right, I need to redo that. I'm kind of a believer that music doesn't need to be perfect. And I think in doing that, it actually becomes a lot more raw and real. So I'll just hit record and see what happens. Start up an octave. I changed my mind. I'm going to take that back to a single drone note hanging out right there, because I don't want any kind of other clashing melody stuff coming in. So I might do an octave instead. Let's just do an octave right here, and we'll hang on the one chord. Let's go up an octave actually. One, 2, 3. Okay. Very simple, not a whole lot of stuff going on. I think for kind of like an ambient piano part, I don't want a whole lot of fast moving chords anyway. So I just did whole notes. Let's unpack that. Whoa. Nope, not that. Unmute. And I know... Oh dang, did it not record that? Crap. Oh well, I'll copy that in later. Let's hear what it sounds like in context. And if I do need to record that last chunk, I will, because it obviously cut off. Let's resolve it. I'll hang out and go to the next downbeat. And because the part is pretty quiet, I'm going to compress it a little bit more and get some more volume out of that. Because as it compresses, I'm doing a post-reverb compression. It's actually going to cause that reverb tail to kind of pull out longer and sound a little bit more... It's going to sound like the notes are kind of running into each other sooner. Just record that on a separate track. Changing my mind about this. Let's go back. And that should be pretty much okay for what I'm doing. I'll jump in there and see how it sounds in context. If it actually... I'm pretty sure that's close to what I played the first time anyway. And I'll do a 16th note quantization. Shouldn't change much, except it should be right on the click. So I was anticipating the next downbeat. Start the next chord. Looks like I got off the click by one beat. So I'm actually gonna pick up all of these parts, all these notes, and just drag them up to the downbeat. I almost don't like quantizing string parts because I know that they naturally have an attack and a release that may be affected by actually changing where the note positions are. Let's pick up all these, except for those. And we'll put you on the downbeat. There it was. Cool. So if I play that section again, okay, so it goes back from a 5 up to a 6 chord. And I'm gonna pull these notes in a little bit. Undo the overlap, so these notes aren't. Nope, not that. There it is. Because I know these notes are gonna overlap and these actually might not activate if I don't do that. So as I'm playing this, I'm gonna get my guitar ready because I know I'm gonna go straight to electric guitar stuff. Gonna turn down these parts a little bit, not too much. Let's go 6 dB ish, close enough. So I'm gonna do a single take, do a one take of this just with guitar slide parts. Now honestly I cannot remember what chord progressions I used where, and that's okay because I know the notes I'm gonna play are gonna correspond to not a whole lot of movement. I'm gonna play some stuff. Usually the notes I'm gonna play are like 1, 2, 4. I get 1, 3, 5, and like maybe a 6. So I'm not gonna play a whole lot of stuff that's gonna clash with these parts. Plus, if I'm playing one single note or maybe 1 or 2 notes with the slide, I'm not gonna go too far with that. So let's just fire that up. Whatever happens, happens. Okay, I couldn't hear myself much. However, I think that didn't matter a whole lot. I know this section right here in the middle, going into the piano part, I'm gonna leave as is. The rest, I will reverse. Kind of create some cool textures with it too. All right. So I know this will take a little bit of time, so I'll probably jump forward in the recording. Let's bounce that in place. Now, when I say record, I'm actually going to do some processing before I bounce it again. So I bounced it once, so I can edit it without editing the original recording. Because I don't want to reverse it, because that's in Logic's destructive editor, so it'll actually change the original recording on my computer. So I want to keep that to a minimum, so I bounced it to its own individual file. This is fine, I'll keep this as is, except I'm going to delete these two. And let's do Supercharger GT. I mentioned this in a previous video. This is actually my go-to plugin when it comes to electric guitars. And I will use, for my swells, I really like using Valhalla Shimmer. I'll do a small, crank it up a little bit, and do a full mix. So what this does, I'm going to play it how I played it, play it how I performed it. And because Supercharger GT is actually a tube compressor, so I will have this after the reverb, just to kind of drag out that reverbed signal. So this actually gets some pretty cool, this will actually become some pretty stinking cool textures as I do this. Now I will go through, I want to cut out some of this stuff. I know that note I kind of bent up sharp whenever I did slide it. So I'm going to cut that little tiny section out. Let's close that for a sec. Let's listen to that. Just the dry signal. I think I slid up into that. Actually, I think that was my starting note that was a little bit off. I'm okay with that, because I know that's going to get kind of buried beneath the rest of the track. So let's hear it again with the reverb and the supercharger. Okay, that's not as bad as I first thought. So I really like that. I think it's a 7 sliding up to a 3. I'll keep that. I'm not going to go out and cut most of the stuff out anyway, because I'm going to reverse it. It'll sound kind of cool anyway. Now, it's kind of a counterintuitive thing to record a part to the rest of the entire track that you recorded. All the chords are all the same. All the notes are specifically lining up here. When I do change chords, I slide up to different notes and stuff. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reverse these, and it's actually going to create, like, not atonal, it's going to be tonal, it's going to be in the key that we're playing in. However, it's going to change a little bit based on, like, it's not going to line up with the chords. And you're going to have that really, like, swooshy kind of reversed signal. And this is my little trick. If I do cut out a part, because I know it's not going to line up anyway, because I'm recording and I'm editing. I'm going to lengthen this part. I'm going to slow it down, like slow it down a little bit. However, I really liked that big swell chord right there. So I'm going to drag that back up. So I keep that big one chord swell right here. And let's bounce these out to their own track. Now, because Valhalla's Shimmer is actually adding reverb tail to all of these notes that I'm playing, when I bounce it out, it keeps that reverb tail. And when I reverse it, the reverb tail will swell into, like, the note. Okay, there's that. Good. So because I have this, you can kind of see it almost blocked out the entire transients. You can't really see where notes are coming in and out, except for like right here where it's obviously a long gap between chords or notes. So I'm going to delete these because I don't need them anymore. And let's hear what this sounds like. The original recording. Bounced out. That's pretty cool. I want to keep this gap because I want to reverse these independently. So I will go up into the file editor. Now reverse. And I'll do the same thing for this one because they're two separate regions. All right, let's see what it sounds like. Now I know this one's going to start swelling pretty early, like right here. Now this is with no other tracks, this is just that guitar part. So it's really just its own pad, essentially. It's kind of turning into a pad, because it's playing very, very slow attack, very, very long releases. And I'm going to overkill it by doing the exact same thing that I just did again. Maybe with not as much reverb or like tube saturation, but I want to keep that tone. I want to keep that and kind of accentuate it a little bit. Just add a little bit more of the breakup from the tubes. So I'll jump to moderate for this one, and not quite have it so high. I know it sounds like a lot. Let's hear what it sounds like in context of the track, because these notes that I played are no longer lining up to, well, first off, they didn't really line up a whole lot in the first place. But the way that I'm playing this, it's going to sound kind of cool. Let's go to the beginning so I can hear the strings. I'm liking that. Now I'm thinking, the more I get to this, I think that as I come to this piano part, anything going on might actually take away from the piano part. So if I'm not mistaken, it's just like a couple of notes here and there. I actually went to not slide parts. Yeah, they're just swelled out notes. I'm gonna cut that out entirely. I don't care for that part because it's gonna get in the way of the piano. But I like that swell. That swell's really nice. Now I'll jump forward. I just added a Valhalla Shimmer and Supercharger GT on this one swell part. I want to hear how it sounds. I want to add more saturation and compression. Okay, it's not breaking up as soon as I'd like it to, so I'm going to raise the input gain. I'll raise the trim, and I'll add a little bit more of that saturation. This part I want it to sound really, really crunchy. Let's hear what hot would sound like. I know I don't use it much. You can already hear the hiss it's introducing. A little bit much. I'm gonna keep it at moderate. And keep it a little bit higher anyway. Yeah, that's nice. Cool. So there's that. The more I think about it, less is going to be more. It's so easy with unlimited tracks, unlimited plugins you could throw in here. It's going to be a really easy task to just overdo a lot of stuff. As a result of that, I see myself, if I keep doing this, I'm just going to add more and more stuff. I think one note or one chord, because the pad up here is just playing a one chord. It's just playing octave. I think if I did the same thing right here with the second guitar, that could be interesting. I'm going to play that. I think what I'll do is like a slide bend. And then hold the Big Sky so it just rings that sustain out. Cool. I'll see what it sounds like with all of my overdrive and reverb. I like it how I had it first. Let's just record it. So I already plucked my note. I'm already dragging out the sustain. As long as I hold this button, it'll drag out. And it's just creating like a light airy sound. So. For times like right now, I kind of wish that the Big Sky had a momentary, or not momentary, a toggle switch. So you hit it and it latches on. So I don't have to sit here for a minute and a half holding down a button. Okay, as the chord comes in, and the more we get into this, I kind of liked that, how it was. I'm gonna make it fade in and fade out. Not super drastic, but also, when you're editing audio clips or audio regions, don't forget to add your fade-ins and fades in and fades out. Fade outs. Because yeah, it has a tendency to click and pop whenever a track stops or starts. I like it. I'm going to lower the volume because that part doesn't need to be noticed. If you're looking for it, you hear it, but if it's just playing and it kind of fades in, you're not really gonna look for it, and it's gonna add a little bit more light, airy texture on top of the, or right beneath the piano part. And I'm gonna add a 6 chord right there where the strings come back in, almost to like signify a section of the songs changing to the next. I get strings are coming in anyway, but if I went to a very light, I'll drop an octave. Good enough. Rolling over cables. So I have that piano 6 chord, and that should be good. Ah, there it is. I knew that chord was coming in early. I totally remember I made it do that. Not bad. I think I'm not hearing a whole lot more going on in my head, which is good, because I don't want to add much more. I like to limit myself if I'm doing stuff like this, less than probably six or 7 tracks, because anymore, every one of these things is taking up a good chunk of sonic spectrum. I know the keys. I'm gonna add this string pad. Let's go with that. And let's go string bass, ambient piano, big swell, reversed guitar, and guitar drone. Now, kind of like I did with, I think it was this region right here, back before I bounced it and then reversed it, I'm going to drag this out a little bit on the forward and back side of it. So on the front and back end, I'm going to actually drag it out a little bit. It's going to slow down the oscillations a little bit on the modulation on the Big Sky. And that's okay, because I'm going to swell it in and swell it out. It's going to be very light in the mix, so you're not going to be able to identify what that sound is. You're just going to think it's almost more of a pad, because the attack of the swell part is so drawn out. And there it is. It's already in the mix, and you can't even tell where it is or what it is. It's just like a light, airy... You can kind of hear like the warble sound. Let's bring it up a little bit. I'm really liking that bowed piano sound up here in the string pad mix. Just because it almost adds like a little bit of harshness to it. Cool. Let's hear what the mix sounds like. I have not added any EQ, compression, or anything to anything other than the guitar parts. So I'm gonna, as I listen to this, I'm gonna do a very quick, dirty EQ compression job on the strings, the bass, the piano part, and I'll do some EQ on the guitars. So I'm gonna do one take through it and mix it a little bit as I go with commentary. So string pad by itself, I know that there's nothing valuable, or there's nothing that's gonna be adding to the quality of the mix. Below, yeah, it's just gonna get muddy if I have anything below, say, 130, 40 hertz. So my first take on EQ, get your high pass filters set. Okay, there's the bass. That one's gonna be quite a bit lower because I need that low end. I might even notch that up a little bit. Let's go to ambient piano. This one's gonna be very light. I know with the piano plugins I use, most of them are already pre-EQ'd anyway. So by themselves, they're gonna sound very, very mellow, especially when I lowered down the attack of the notes, so it's not gonna sound very tacky or very hard sounding. It's gonna sound like a soft felt piano. Also, how I performed it was pretty quiet. I hit the notes very lightly. Even when I really kind of hit it a little bit harder, it's still very soft sounding. Okay, EQ, let's go to the big swell. The more I hear that, I'm gonna bring this in a little bit. I know that's one of the pedals I used has quite a bit of gain, which is where you get that kind of hissy sound. It's like a little, very light crackling. It's because the signal's going through that pedal so hot. It just introduces some noise. Cool. Let's go to the next part. Reversed guitar. This one's going to be a little bit more interesting because I have a lot more high end. I used a POG on this part, adding an upper octave and a little bit of lower octave. I like using that for swells because it helps things cut through the mix. It also creates more of like an organy kind of texture. I'll get back to that. I just want to get the low cut filter going. And this part should be pretty easy. Yeah, I see a couple of these notes peeking through. I'll go through and just cut that out. Everything below that. You can't really see anything, but when I go down here, you see that there is sonic information here, which is not going to contribute anything to the mix other than making it kind of muddy, because when you have 3 guitar parts or multiple instruments that have this stuff going on, You can boost this as much as you want, and by yourself, you're probably not going to hear much. But when it's that many instruments playing the exact same rumbly part in the, you know, sub 200 hertz range, that's really counterintuitive to what you're trying to do. Because you're not trying to use that negative, you know, production stuff. That's actually just going to get in the way of your sound of the track. So everything's got a low pass or low pass. So let's go in and I will do a very quick EQ on strings. Now, what I'm looking for is harsh tones, specifically in, I call this like search and destroy method, where you just find a somewhat narrow band, raise it, and kind of sweep it through. And where you hear something that's going to be loud, if you were to listen to this mix at a very loud level, what would hurt your ears the most? And that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that part that's going to get in the way of enjoying the mix. There's one. I'm going to keep moving and roll that down. I'm not going to cut a huge amount, probably 3 or 4 dB, until I notice that part, if I were to raise it again. So that tone is not in the key I'm playing in, obviously. So it's an overtone of a lower note, which is going to get in the way a little bit if it stands out too loud in the mix. And I am actually going to lower my headphone volume and lower the recording volume a little bit so I can get this at full volume. And I will do individual mixing as I do this. So let's go back to muting the rest of the band. Let's do some faster moving notes, so I can hear more of the chords and more of the pitches I'm actually playing throughout the track. And I'll sweep that one through. So there's a pitch I could cut out a little bit. There's a frequency, almost like a woo kind of sound. There it is. I don't like that. 290. Sorry, you gotta go. I'm gonna cut you down. And of course, anything that I actually boost, like more than 8 dB, is gonna sound awful. But I'm looking for those individual frequencies that are not helping that part. So that might be somewhat valuable. As it gets full band and kind of I hit the velocity of the notes harder, I know that frequency is actually going to have a little bit of value, so I don't want to just chop that out entirely. Let's go to the high end a little bit. Oh, there's one. So this is actually a note in the key that I'm playing. I can kind of hear that a couple octaves lower, so I'm going to leave that alone a little bit. A little bit above 2K. And I'll use my last band as almost like a tone shaping. I'm not going to do a whole lot of like very narrow cuts, but I want to find something that I like and give a little bit more value to that. So not quite boosting it so much as I am just like rounding it off a little bit, finding the tonal region of this track that I really enjoy. So I know keys, I'm going to like the lower mids a little bit. I don't want something that's gonna ruin. Like, I'm not just gonna, that sounds good, I'll keep it there. What I'll do is I'll do the opposite. I'm gonna cut and then just sweep it and see what I don't like being gone. add some warmth by coming back with a little bit in the mids, low mids. It's not bad. Let's go to the bass and we'll see what we have here. Let's go to some faster moving parts. Okay, I notice these notes aren't sustaining out, so I will fix that. Interesting. Let's see what we have here in this track. Let's go to sustain. So I know that those notes are having sustained. Oh, what's the sustains hitting? Sustains closing. I'm just gonna increase the length of these. I'm gonna use a very quick key command. MIDI transform, quantize note length. Let's go one. Let's go to right there. Select and operate. So every note has been quantized to the nearest 1/2 beat, which shouldn't affect much. It just allows me to very easily see, okay, this isn't lining up. Let's just highlight all of these and drag it out to length. And there is some stuff I could do on the actual instruments part in the plugin. This is a quick and dirty way to fix this. I could set it up to be a mono instrument, so it's not having a polyphonic, not playing multiple notes at a time, which is the goal. If it's a bass part, I don't want to have a whole lot of notes going on in the low end, because it's just going to muddy up the mix. This is something I could probably do on the post-production stuff after I'm done recording. This is all the nitty-gritty. Let's just EQ it. I think the fact that I don't like that is, let's just drop it an octave. I know that part was higher played anyway. And the rest of these. I know it sounds better an octave lower anyway. And some of these notes might need to come up. It's already better. Now let's just do that pretty quick. Let's boost it, find some frequencies that sound out of place. I'm not going to be too particular on this. Now, if this part were recorded live, that would be a completely other story. Yeah, this sounds pretty good anyway. I'm not going to do too much. I'm just going to call that good. I like that. Good enough. Not a whole lot going on right there that I need to work on. Now, piano, this might be a little bit more. Let's see what we got. I really like the hammer attack you can get from that. cool. Ooh, there's a one. I know that's actually a note I'm playing, so of course it's going to be loud. Not quite like an overtone, but an actual fundamental note that I'm playing. I still thought that was something I could clean up a little bit. And this band I'll use to just kind of lower the low mids, give or take 200, 300 hertz. I do know guitars are going to typically take a little bit of space in this. Now, because it is a piano-driven part, there's not a whole lot of stuff I need to work on this one. So I think that sounds, from what I can hear, that sounds pretty good. Let's solo the guitar, just that big swell. That sounds good enough for what it's for. That's not a very prominent part anyway. Now you can see, because I'm using the octave, I'm using an octave pedal as well as an octave reverb. So the Valhalla Shimmer has an octave up reverb for the actual shimmer. So I'm gonna have a lot of overtones on this. You can see all these very, very distinct spikes. So if I'm playing this specific note, I have an octave above that, and then an octave above the octave above for the shimmer. So the high end is going to have these very, very prominent spikes. Now I might need to be careful because I know some of these pitches, these frequencies are going to stand out quite a bit because they are acting almost as their own notes. Let's tighten that band a little bit. There's one, I'm gonna cut that out. Now, I don't like doing a whole lot of other stuff with EQ, so I'm gonna use only the four parametric bands it's gonna give me right here. Now, I don't find myself using high or low shelves a whole lot. If it's a part I know is gonna be very, very shrill and sharp sounding, it's gonna get in the way. I might even high cut that. Because there's not a whole lot of audible stuff, probably above 10K, that I'm hearing anyway. Now on a sound system that could probably reproduce that frequency, I might notice it a little bit more. Yeah, because I'm using so many octave type stuff, I'm gonna have probably a 9K-ish roll off on the high end. And let's get more into this recording up here. And let's see what we can find, because I'm going to cut out some more stuff. I don't want to spend all day doing this, even though I've already spent past half hour doing this. This is a necessary part of mixing, is just getting your EQs, taking your time, because if you want to hear stuff, it's so easy to visualize stuff because it's right in front of you. You can actually see this is what a boost at 1K looks like, but you can't, if you're paying attention to that, what you're actually mixing is not always what you want to do. So as a rule of thumb, always use your ears. As I do this, I'm gonna actually verbalize what I'm hearing. So that's okay. I'm gonna cut that just a little bit, not much. Now I know that I was hearing right here this frequency at 740-ish. I'm gonna widen that band quite a bit because I was hearing that frequency more than I would like to. Now around low mids for guitar, that's gonna be a good area to pay attention to. But because I know that I'm playing just octave parts on this, that's not a whole lot in the way. So I might even raise this up a little bit. Now I'm gonna listen to that with the first half. That's not bad. Let's go to the drone part. This will be very, very quick because it's just one note. So the notes I hear are the notes I am gonna hear. And luckily, I'm actually just going to high cut. And I'm not gonna do much. That's good enough for what it's doing. It's so buried in the mix, it's not gonna get in the way of much. Now I like the dynamic range of the actual stringed instruments. The piano, I already have a compressor on here kind of dragging out the reverb tails, so I'm not going to do much with that. The big swell, I have the supercharger compressing that quite a bit. And the rest of these, I have some compression going on with the supercharger, so I would almost consider that pretty well set up. I want to listen to this as a whole and see what we have. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm listening to individual parts, and I'm asking myself, what's standing out? What am I hearing? What am I wishing I heard more of? So what's kind of that ear candy that really that it makes me want more of it? So after listening a little bit, I know I would like this part to drop down a little bit for the piano section. I hear this part in my headphones, my in-ear monitors. I'm hearing it pretty front and centered. I'm gonna extend that a little bit. I'm gonna kind of pull that closer toward the sides of the stereo spectrum by doing a couple of steps. Let's add reverb. I'll do a small. Let's go 100 mix. Pretty similar to the rest of the guitar parts. Now, here's where it's going to get a little bit interesting. I'm going to do actually a couple more things. I'm going to add a directional mixer and then leave a space. Leave a space for another plugin. And I'll do a tremolo. Because I'd like a little bit more movement between the stereo field. Not quite that much. For like pad parts like this, that's a 16th note. I want to keep it kind of a lower mix. So it's adding a little bit of movement between my two ears. And this is where it kind of widens out a little bit. So here's full stereo spread, doubling up. Now, it does have a lot of phase cancellation, so it's going to be out of phase. I like keeping it below probably 1.5. Just add a little bit of depth, a little bit of space. Now, something else I could do is add a mid-side EQ and then just kind of cut the low end. But I don't think that's super necessary on this specific part. Because it's not moving. It's not a moving melody or anything. So I like that. I'm gonna bring it up a little bit. Probably there. Here's that guitar part. It's like you don't notice that it's kind of bouncing between with the tremolo, and that's okay. Okay, I like that how it jumps right back into the strings. It sounds purposeful, like it hits that minor 6 chord and it goes right back into the chord progression. Now, I'm hearing quite a bit of dynamic range that I'd like to kind of tighten up a little bit. So I'm gonna do a velocity processor on the MIDI effects. So this actually shows you visually where the notes are with how they're being played. So here's the input. The notes I'm playing roughly, I don't know, 100-ish, 90-ish right there. It's like a compressor for MIDI notes. And I'm gonna add a compressor, just a very lightly compress this signal, no more than probably 5 dB. Just enough to, I think that's probably good. Because with the velocity processor and the compressor, I shouldn't have a whole lot of issues with that being too loud now. Good. So I am actually really okay with that. I think the entire thing so far, from beginning to end, let's just go and I'll do one of my normal things. I like the sound of kind of the warmth that a tape delay will bring. So I learned this from a mentor of mine that showed me that you can do almost like a tape emulator with the tape delay. So keep the time all the way down, and we'll have just a little bit of the wet signal brought in. Actually, all wet, no dry. And let's hear what that sounds like. It should add a little bit more. It's a little bit louder too, so the mix is also a little bit higher in the volume. I'll add the rest of my like quote-unquote mastering plugins. Let's do this -1. On the analyzer, I'm taking a look at what volume I'm actually at, what volume I'm producing. So I'm negative 17-ish on loudness units, full scale. So I know as I'm playing these parts, I have everything either mixed at unity or pretty close to unity. So I'm not gonna have a gain drop or a drop in volume on the other instruments. So I do know, as I'm looking at this, the low end is gonna be the most noticeable thing in the mix. So I'm missing a little bit of the high end, obviously. I think something from that 2 to 8K hertz range. I might add another drone pad on top of it, but make it very, very light and airy. So let's add a light and airy kind of pad. I have something in mind, it's gonna be very, very basic. I might even do like actual strings. Let's go back to Omnisphere. Dang it, missed. Spectrasonics Omnisphere stereo. Now let's see. Let's go here. Because I can, let's just search for textures playable. Sacred Shrine. The first one that pops up. Okay, this could be useful. Let's go up a couple octaves. One more. Now it's gonna sound loud up front because I have the volume at unity. I'm gonna drop it down probably 6 to 8 dB. And let's see with the analyzer what I'm actually making. So my root note is give or take over 120 or 1.2K hertz-ish. I'm gonna do a 5 and a 1. So that note by itself with a reverb, and I'm not gonna use Valhalla Shimmer this time. I'm gonna go to Native Instruments. They've got some pretty cool plugins, specifically in reverbs. So I'll do RC48. I like this one. It starts off with a full mix, which is interesting for like a bus-fed reverb. I'm gonna do probably 80-ish% mix. And what I'll do in these settings, I'll lower the bass, lower the mids, and the high cut itself, it's at 4-ish K. Let's go up to like a 6 or 7K. Full range, let's keep it there. Because I want to do my EQs and stuff here. So you can see the actual frequencies I am producing here. Again, that rumble, that will be on every track, every instrument. That'll need to be cut out. I like doing a post analyzer so I can see what I'm actually taking out. And I do plan on doing a high cut, but not much. Probably 10-ish, 12-ish hertz, or 12K. And a little bit of a high shelf cut up here. Because that part, I want it to be just like that guitar drone part. I want it to be noticed only if I'm telling you to look for it. So let's do a record. One single hit of the notes. I can drag that out. So let's do this. Let's quantize it. Quantize. And put that on the downbeat. And drag it out. Now I'm going to Alt drag and make it the full length of the song. Now that that is done, this may take a while. I will bounce it in place. Usually this takes, I don't know, less than a minute. For the longer stuff I've done, like a 30-minute piano part, that usually takes 5 or so minutes to bounce out, which, you know, get up, go get something to snack on, go get a sandwich or something, come back and it'll be all ready to go. Speaking of snacks, raw, unfiltered music production. I'm gonna eat some gummy worms. Merry Christmas. Now, the reason I'm actually bouncing this out, there's a little bit more purpose than just like, oh, I'd rather work with an audio file. Because audio is going to be easier to like start and stop in the middle of the section. If you'll notice on the string parts, when I start in the middle of that quiet down moment, right here where the piano starts, it's because that MIDI note has never been signified to be on. So if I signal to turn the MIDI note on, it'll actually play that part. But because I'm starting it in the middle of it, the only thing it sees from there forward is a MIDI off note. So it doesn't know to actually play that MIDI note. So when I do like a long drone pad like this, I want to hear it as I'm mixing, and I don't want to have to start from the beginning every time I run through a track. So this will be done here in just a sec. But as I do this, it'll allow me to, I can add my own fade-ins and stuff with automation curves, or just keep it at a low volume and have a very beginning fade in and fade out with the region itself. Also, I know with a four-core computer, mine is actually quite a bit older. At the time of recording this Mac that I'm using actually has a 4-core, I think 2.5 gigahertz, which is quite a bit lower on the Intel Core i5 Spectrum. In time, I may be blessed with a new Mac, but for the time being, I say work with whatever you have, no matter how long it takes to export. Okay, so I know I already EQ'd a lot of this, but let's dive a little bit deeper into the EQ and cut out the very noticeable, before I just lower the volume, I want to cut out the stuff that if raised, it would hurt your ears. Obviously, it's like a metallic sounding pad, so I'm going to hear some of that stuff anyway. And I'm going to smear it by having another reverb plugin just with a high mix. At this point, I'm not really too concerned about this, so I'll just do a full Silververb default settings. Let's hear how that sounds. Sounds a bit wider. So without, I want to make it after the, actually no, before the EQ. Yeah, it sounds a lot more smooth. So I like that. Let's get rid of this track because I don't need it. Again, I'll do my high shelf cut. And let's mix it into place. Let's get back to our window right here. So let's go back to our multimeter and I'll listen and look. So before, this was what we had. So there's not really much. There's kind of a noticeable drop up here around 2 to 4, maybe at 8K. However, as I mix this, we'll turn that on and we'll take a look at the analyzer again. So there's already more going on around 2 to 4K. Something else I'm thinking about, that bass doesn't really cut through as much as I'd like it to, so I'm going to go to the utility, or specialized actually, exciter, and I'll find a note or a pitch that I'd like to kind of emphasize, or emphasize the harmonics of, or the overtones. So let's go 25, give or take. So you can hear, if I'm choosing, 1K to emphasize, there's not too much going on at 1K for a bass, but if I go down to like a 400 hertz-ish, let's go around 200 hertz. So before, after. It's much more prominent. Nice. Now, I don't necessarily want to just only artificially boost that, because I know that the instrument itself is a very, very mellow sounding string bass. See if there's anything I can do in the plugin. Because in my mind, it's always better it's always better to adjust at the source of something than try to correct it or fix it with EQ. So let's turn off that exciter. I'd like to use that exciter still, because I do like the kind of tone it shifts, the tone it changes and adds to it. So I'm gonna have a little bit of a boost. Let's go down 4 or 5. Let's go 8K-ish. I want to add a little bit more kind of air to that. Now I might be able to hear it. In the plugin. So if you don't know what something does, raise it to 100% and listen. So that's definitely a lot of air it's adding. Let's stick around a 2K boost. A 2K boost around 4K. Or a 2 decibel boost around 4K. I'm liking that. Let's hear what it sounds like with the very light boost of the harmonics around 180. Not bad. I can't say that's bad. Now, one thing I will fix, definitely, I need to give some attention to these notes that are not lining up properly. I know when I recorded them, I must have taken my foot off the sustain. Let's just see what it does when I drag out. I convert sustain to note length. So I have a couple of presets that I've, or kind of key commands that I've set up. Q is quantize. W is convert note to sustain, or convert sustain to note length. And my third one is E, which is, so QRE is going to be basically correct overlapping notes. So if I have two notes that are overlapping, same note pitch, it'll just, see if I can visually do this. So if I have two notes that are lined up, it'll just shorten the length of one of them so that the notes don't interfere with each other. Because I know a MIDI on, a MIDI on will cause the second note to not fire, because there's no notified to have the note turned off, or something like that, where it's just a MIDI issue that can be corrected by adjusting the note length. So let's go in here. This should have corrected most of them. Start at the beginning. Now I can usually edit these faster than the notes actually play. Like, these look like they're pretty well set. They're not gonna have a whole lot of issues. There's one. Now these might need some work. I want the notes to overlap a little bit, but not necessarily like sustained together. So there's one right here. There's one thing I don't like is if there's anything I don't like, it's probably the fact that if a bass note plays and then cuts off before the next bass note hits, it just sounds empty. Like it's taking away from the mix, because you're losing all that low frequency. that's about it. Now I'm going to correct that note right there because it's too long. Yeah, especially with these lower notes, lower frequency notes, you get to the point of like frequency modulation where you have two very, very close in pitch but low frequency notes, and they almost like whoa, 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 whoa. That is a good way to almost sound unintentionally muddy. So let's hear the walk up right here. Nice. I'm gonna add some fade outs, and I think this one's about ready to be saved. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna cause the bass to sustain longer and fade out a little bit slower. I don't need a super long fade out. I feel like it could end right there and have the bass drag out a little bit longer. Obviously that pad is needing to be cut. And I'll just add a fade out right there. Volume. I want this to fade in, but I'll have it fade in over the course of maybe, oh, I don't know. 8 bars at 58 BPM is gonna be pretty slow. Let's have it like that, where I can hear it once it gets here. Not bad. So I've been recording for about an hour and 51 minutes, give or take. I know the video length might actually be a little bit shorter, but from what I'm hearing, I am not too awfully disappointed. I like doing this stuff in less than maybe an hour or two. Now I know the more that I layer a track, I like using the click. I use the metronome so I can line up directly with the beat. So if I'm adding more MIDI stuff, or I'm adding guitar or anything else, I like to have the precision of lining up with the beat. Because I know a lot of the other stuff that I've done has been, you know, turn off the metronome and just play at whatever tempo I almost feel like or don't feel like. Because some of the stuff I do actually doesn't have a tempo. So if I play and it's very, very slow, I might hold one chord for, you know, 2.5 bars, while the next one I go to the, you know, 4 bars. Man, I do like the sound of the hammers on that piano. I'm gonna raise the volume on the recording, and I'll stop talking for a sec. think that'll do. Awesome. Now I know there are a couple of moments in the video that I recorded that I'll probably cut out. However, I think that's a pretty well a good take for showing kind of my creative process, how I think, how I go through instrumentation, picking and choosing the stuff that I want, and kind of removing the stuff that is not going to benefit the track. I'm going to cut out these last chunks of wasted time, because after everything's muted and faded out, this could be pulled back like so. Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's good enough for a 2-hour video. So I'll have this uploaded. I'll upload this individual track, and I'll link it in the description of this longer commentary video. So awesome. Appreciate your time if you've watched this far, or if you just jumped ahead. I still appreciate that. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. I've got a comment section for that. If you felt like this helped you in any way, you know, don't hesitate to subscribe. I've got plenty more videos like this coming ahead of time, and I might even get more into like the less ambient orchestral stuff and see what kind of more value I can bring you guys. All right, appreciate it. Thank you.